Hey there, welcome to the course. This is Android Application Development. This is actually a pretty good fun course. I'm going to go through just a very short PowerPoint presentation to kind of give you an introduction to the course. So let's begin. So here we are, Android Application Development. This actually is a fun course. Last time I taught this course, there was several people who actually ended up marketing, going in and getting an account on Google and marketing their app, and we're making, like 20 or 30 bucks a month from the sale of their apps. I mean, there's a possibility that you can make money off of this course. Pretty cool, huh? Now, this is kind of an intermediate level course. You do have to have some Java background. The initial Java course, the 3332, is just fine. So I think it's okay. Now, this is very in-depth. I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff to learn. But if you've ever taken any of my courses before, I tend to stress a lot of the concepts rather than some of the nitty-gritty details. Okay, so let's go. So this is a hybrid course where, the vast majority of the lecture is done online. And then we meet once a week in the classroom to do a lab work. And the lab work is just to reinforce the concepts that you learned from the previous video. Okay, that's how it works. So combination of, asynchronous videos means it's not live or anything. I mean, they're just static videos that have been prepared in advance. And then face-to-face labs where I ask you to, okay, now show me how you can do this label and show me how you can change the margin and that kind of stuff. And so the only prerequisite we have for the course is the Java class. If you have some Java background but haven't taken the course, that's fine. The book, Android Programming for Beginners, it's a decent book. A very good book, actually. We're going to go through it. We may not go through it exactly in the same order. I might skip around a bit. And I tend to supplement the material in the book by somewhere around 20%, which means you really do have to pay attention. The book by itself won't be sufficient. Okay, so once again, this is a hybrid course, so there's labs. So half of you have labs on Tuesdays, and the other half have labs on Thursdays. And the course is split about 50-50. So half of you do a Tuesday and half of you do a Thursday. So here's how it works. Let's just say we're at week 3. And so the video lecture for week 3 covers chapters 5 and 6. But the next week's lab covers that video. In other words, it's not the current video. It's the previous video. You follow me? So in week 4, face-to-face, we're going to be talking about the lecture from week 3 that was a video lecture. Okay, I hope that made sense. I got a little way to describe this in just a minute. So online videos, I release videos every Monday morning. Typically about an hour, maybe an hour and a half for a batch of videos, lectures. The videos are broken up into 15-minute chunks just so you have a life. You can stop and, go do something and come back. So none of the videos are more than 15 minutes long. They're recorded in not the superest duperest video format because that just makes them larger. And if you want to use these on small devices that I just chose, a 720p high def format, which is pretty doggone low these days. And then one of the cool tricks that we'll show you after a while is if you're at YouTube, you can hit the little gear in the corner and you can speed the video up. Somewhere around like 1.25 maybe, or maybe 1.5, and I don't end up sounding like a chipmunk. It just goes right on through, just at a faster pace. Kind of cool. Okay, so since majority of the lecture is going to be asynchronous, means recorded in advance, there's no way you can ask a question. You can't raise your hand and go, wait a minute, I didn't get that. So you can send me an email or ask me a question, or you can wait till the next week to get your answer done. So see how it kind of works? So email your questions soon while you have them. Don't necessarily wait till next week till you see me. I mean, that's possible as long as you can keep all that stuff in your head. And then, of course, if you have problems with a project, like we're having an assignment or something, feel free to come to me and say, look, here's where I'm at. And I'm having trouble right here. Is this right? I mean, that's perfectly okay. You can even do that via email too. You can send me a, like a snapshot or something and say, look, I've got this error message. How do I fix this? That kind of thing. Okay. So bottom line is, please do the, let me know if you're having trouble and ask questions. Okay. So obviously everything is done through Canvas for the lecture part, right? So in addition to that, all the assignments and quizzes and exams and all the rest of that stuff is also through Canvas. And of course you need access to a halfway decent computer. One of the stories that I tell is about, okay, it's time for the final exam, and the weather's getting kind of bad, and there's a thunderstorm coming, and you're smack dab in the middle of doing your exam, and boop, your lights go out, and you're going, geez. So you lost power, lost internet. So you got to make sure you're in if you don't have decent internet connection, you might actually consider like driving out to the university and using one of the computers there in the computer lab, because it's kind of sort of important to have a decent connection. Okay, so in this course, you're going to be submitting some Word documents. Now, I didn't actually say you need a Microsoft Word. I said you need to be able to submit a Word document. But hey, kind of sort of implies there, particularly since, the university, you can get a free, Microsoft Office 365 subscription. There's a little portal that you can go to on Canvas, or you can go through the Outlook Web Access. We are going to be using a piece of software called Android Studio, both in the classroom and at home. I guess you kind of sort of could use an alternative, but to tell you the truth, I would not recommend it, not at all, because the book is going to be using Android Studio. I'm going to be using Android Studio. The computers at the university are going to be running Android Studio, so it's sort of like, I'm sorry, but you're probably going to need to be running Android Studio. So the bare bones minimum requirement for this is pretty rough. I mean, 4 gig of RAM for installing it. 8 gig is the recommended one. So just saying, it's a pretty hefty kind of a scenario. So what are your expectations? Well, you're going to learn an awful lot about the integrated development environment, the Android Studio. You're going to learn an awful lot about Java, although you hopefully bringing an awful lot of that to the table. And you're going to be creating all sorts of cool little applications to demonstrate your knowledge. Now, you don't need to be a computer expert to do well in this course, and I don't think it's my job to turn you into a computer expert. You could be like a designer and have a good time at this course. So, just a little bit about Android. Android is based upon Linux operating system, and it uses Java. And we're going to be concentrating on the phone. Android could be like for a tablet or a phone or maybe even a smartwatch. I mean, there's an awful lot of form factors. We're probably just going to concentrate on just the phone form factor just to make things a little easier. And you don't actually have to have an Android phone to be able to pull this off, or any phone at all for that matter. We're going to be using an emulator that's going to emulate a phone. Now, I will tell you, if you've ever used an Android phone before, the user interface will be just very familiar with, because it's like, oh, I know how to do that. But if you've never used an Android phone ever, well, then you might have to spend like 5-10 minutes trying to figure out how the dang thing works. Without regard to you writing an Android app, we're talking about just operating the phone. Cool? All right. So there's a bunch of chapters in the books. We're only going to cover 18 of them. Strategically picked the ones that I thought were appropriate. About halfway through, chapter 7 through 11, essentially, is kind of a repeat from the Java course. And so I'm going to go through kind of slow to make sure you have all this Java background before we start going any deeper into things. So if you don't have a strong Java background, that's perfectly okay, because we're going to hit the highlights of all this stuff. What is a class and what is an interface, and how do I create an instance of a class? All that stuff which you, in theory, have already got, but I'm not making that assumption. So I'm going to hit everything. Okay. So here's a graph that I show at the beginning of every class. And basically, it's to demonstrate the type of learning that we're after. You know, if you're in elementary school, you know, recalling facts and concepts, you know, define, duplicate, list, memorize, repeat, you know, like, what's the state capital? You know, you have to memorize that kind of stuff. There's hardly any learning associated with memorizing state capitals. So I'm after things like understanding and the ability to apply. You know, the classify, describe, discuss, explain. Oh, I love explaining type questions. And execute, implement, solve, demonstrate. Yeah, so we're going to be explaining lots of things, and we're going to be demonstrating lots of things. So I tend to spend an awful lot. I mean, this is college, right? I tend to spend a little bit more on the higher levels of the Bloom's taxonomy here. So just to drive home that point, one of the things I ask occasionally on a test question is that you have to understand the difference between what question and a why question. You know, a what question is, what's the capital of South Dakota? And the correct answer from my perspective is, I don't know, I'll look it up. That's what I would consider to be a correct answer, because I'm not into memorization. Everyone has a phone. You can find those kind of things. You don't need to memorize stuff. So I'm going to be asking you something like, why did the state capital move from Houston to Austin? You know, not when and, you know, all those statistics, but why? Why did it occur? Now that's a cool story. The fact that it occurred, you know, on a particular date and time, it's like, that's boring. But why did it occur? Ooh, that's a good question. So I very rarely ask questions like, define the following term. Yeah, that's not my kind of questions. My kind of questions are going to be, explain to me why, of the following three choices, why is the number 3 the better of them? That is a good question. Okay? So you guys understand all this. Good. So here's the course. There's 2 major exams, the midterm and the final. It's not comprehensive, so obviously the midterm is the first half of the course and the final is the second half of the course. We're going to have a review video and before the exam that's going to go over all of the topics, so there'll be lots of good stuff in there. You'll have quizzes basically every other week, and then assignments that are out there every other week. Most of the time you're submitting a Word document. Sometimes you'll be submitting a zip file. Okay, so assignments are out there for essentially 2 weeks. It's actually 12 days. They show up on Monday, but they're not due that Friday. They're due the following Friday. I have a little thing that shows this in just a minute. In fact, that's coming up now. Oh, no, it's not. So here's basically how the layout works. Exams are worth a quarter, you know, so that's 12.5% for the midterm, right? Quizzes are 30%, assignments are 30%, and the term project is 15%. 1.5 letter grades for the term project. So yeah, there's an awful lot of weight associated with that term project. So here's how the weekly schedule works, and this is for the weekly schedule for the video lectures. So the first week, we're going to do having an install video. It's pretty simple. And then going into chapters 1 and 2 in the book. So that's how that works. Cool? Now the lab ones, if you're a Tuesday lab person, here's what the schedule looks like. So the second week, we're going to go over the videos from the first week. Cool? And of course, if you're a Thursday person, well then this is the same thing. It's just the Thursday folks. Okay, so here's how the weekly routine works. Actually, okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. So I'm going to pause this video, stop, and then we'll pick it up again in the next video. Okay, you guys understand how this works? Cool.